We're in here talking about practice. I mean, listen, we're talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We're talking about practice.
We're talking about practice. Now, don't discount practice. You talk to any world-class performer, any world-class athlete, and they'll tell you that practice is the key to greatness. Now, this is the second video in a series of videos about practice. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how to make practice mental. We're going to look at some professional athletes. We're even going to watch a video of one of the greatest fighters of all time, Anderson Silva. This guy fights as skillful as Michelangelo paints. And we're going to watch a video of one of his practice sessions. And we're going to see how his practice is different than any other practice. But first, we're going to watch a video of an athlete that I know personally, and I got to watch his meteoric rise from the bottom to the top. I asked him to speak and just to share with us how he made such drastic improvements in such a short amount of time.
I was never born a good football player. I was always the slowest, shortest, smallest kid out there. I was never strong my freshman and sophomore year. And after my sophomore season, I decided I want to be really good at football. I put in the time, I worked hard. I went to every summer workout, did 7-on-7, worked with the QB, a whole offense, and I did powerlifting to build my strength. I did track to be faster and be able to jump higher. I did extra workouts with some of the coaches to improve my speed and mechanics, and I attended a lot of football camps. The most important reason I think to being a good football player is the way you practice. If you're mentally locked in all the time, you're focusing, you're asking questions, you're thinking of ways to get better every day, you're jogging back from play and you're just thinking of how you could do that better next time, just mental reps all the time, and you're always paying attention to that. And then another reason is practicing outside of practice. You don't finish a drill the way you wanted to, you go home and fix that, or you work with another teammate and you fix that also. And I do think anybody can be great. Just it takes a lot of time and hard work and dedication and the desire to be the best. I went from my freshman and sophomore year to not playing to my junior year being the receiver of the year, the Spartan leader, and leading the team in receiving touchdowns.
What we're going to look at here is a video of two exceptional athletes, the quarterback and the receiver at the bottom of the screen. Both all-state athletes. Both had athletic scholarships. The quarterback was to LSU, the receiver was to Alabama. And both ended up getting drafted in the first round of the Major League Draft to play baseball. One for the LA Dodgers and the other for the Atlanta Braves. So exceptional baseball players as well. But what really makes these guys unique is the way they practiced. They had exceptional practice habits. An example was many days I'd walk into our practice facility and there would be Zach, the quarterback, and he'd have set out all 12 of his footballs, and he'd have a net set up in the back of the end zone. And he'd just pick up a football and he'd go through his drop and he'd throw it into the net. And some days I'd walk over and watch him. And as I'm watching him, he's sitting there and he's calling out short, or it's too long, or good. And so he had made about 5 or 6 in a row, and then he throws one, he says, oh, short. And I asked him, I said, are you watching the ball in flight? And he says, no, coach, my eyes never come off the target. I can tell, though, where it's going the second it leaves my hand. And that's the definition of mental practice, is a focus and a monitoring of every muscle, of every movement. He was fully aware of everything that his body was doing. Another example would be at practice The quarterback would be there throwing passes, and if ever he threw a poor pass, you never really had to coach him. If ever he threw a poor pass, he would immediately reset his mechanics, he'd reset his feet, and he'd go through the same motion again without the ball. So it'd be a poor throw, and you could just see in his eyes, he'd already identified the problem, and then he would go about fixing it by resetting his mechanics without the ball, and he would go through this throwing motion all over again with no ball and fix any errors that he might have had. The video, world-class athlete, Anderson Silva. And I'm showing you this so that you can recognize how mental his practices are, how he's always self-correcting. His coach doesn't have to tell him, but he's correcting errors that his coach doesn't even recognize or doesn't even know about. So there's a hole, and he fixes it the next time.
A famous violin teacher once said, "Practice with your fingers and you need all day. Practice with your mind and you can do as much in 1.5 hours." Meaning, if you're just there physically, it'll take you all day to learn what somebody else who is mentally locked in has learned in just 1.5 hours.